As you learn about the narcissistic pattern, it's also wise to reflect on the much healthier alternatives. Now, below you're going to find a link to my new extensive course called Ready, Set, Connect. It addresses both the mindset and the skills involved in gratifying relationships, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. I want to talk with you today in a way that can seem a bit counterintuitive, and by that I mean I'm going to share with you an idea that you're probably not going to want to have to really accept or receive, but at the same time, as you think it through very carefully, you're going to realize, well, this does make a lot of sense. Now, I'm going to set this up by saying one of the biggest problems that can set you up for all sorts of emotional duress when you're engaging with that narcissistic person is that you can appeal to relationship ideals. And you see, that sounds like a good thing. It's like, well, I want to have some good ideals. And, for example, I know that I'll treat you right, and I hope that you would treat me right too. Let's have a sense of consideration in the way that we engage with one another. Let's have a certain amount of friendliness and approachability. Let's commit to a certain core decency. Let's give one another affirmation. Let's make room for the fact that we don't think the same. Those would be some of the ideals that we can appeal to as we engage with other individuals. And frankly, they make sense. Now, I think you can probably guess where I'm going with this. When you have an individual who has a strong narcissistic bent, and we zero in on the characteristics that are a part of that pattern, you realize that so much of what they carry on the inside cuts against those ideals. When you have an attitude that says, well, I'm entitled, things are supposed to go my way, they're very selfish in the way they approach you. When you have individuals who are willing to use and manipulate and exploit, you're heading for trouble. When you have somebody that says, well, there's one person in this equation that's better than the other, and guess who's going to be in each role there? These are individuals who live behind the veneer of a false self. They're highly defensive. And so you look at the pattern of narcissism, and it can cut against the ideals that you want to hold on to. Those ideals actually can make sense. And in the process, you wind up having all sorts of strain and tension and frustration because you see, sometimes the narcissist can sometimes say, well, I go along with those ideals, but time actually proves they don't. And then as you begin realizing that these individuals don't live up to your ideals, what do? Well, you can actually double down on your thinking. You might argue your case. You might try to persuade that individual about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. You can plead with that individual. You can go into a bargaining mode. And you know what that does to the narcissist? It actually empowers them. The narcissist, as you hold on to your ideals and then as you try to plead your case and make things go the way that you say it ought to go, begins realizing, I'm in the power position now. Because you have such a craving, you have such a desire for me to live in the way that you want. Watch how I'm going to twist this around and I'm going to make you so frustrated. And they actually turn it into a game. And then when that begins happening, you can sink into futility and you can presume, well, I just can't deal with this. I can't stand it when my standards, which make such good sense, are not appreciated by the narcissist. Now, when that begins to happen, a certain number of complaints can come to the forefront, and you wind up going into the negative complaint mode toward the narcissist. But even those complaints are driven by the original ideals that you would have. And I want to see if I can identify for you 8 of the most common complaints that you can have as you try to come to terms with the fact that the narcissist is not living up to your ideals. And then doing so, you can see that the more you hold on to these complaints, the more you're actually tethered to the narcissist. For example, the first complaint I want you to think about is, if I accept who the narcissist is, it feels weak. because it feels like I'm being compromising toward that individual. And in the end, the narcissist is going to walk away thinking, yeah, and I win. And you can also think, well, I'm just not going to let that happen. Or a second complaint that you can hold on to that keeps you tethered to that narcissist is, well, the narcissist has caused too much pain. So I'm just supposed to pretend like that's okay? Is that what you're trying to tell me? And you can see that that idealism can turn into a cynicism on your part. Or a third complaint that you can find yourself mired in is, but I trusted this person, and all I received was betrayal. And then you can just hold on to the futility that goes with the notion that says, yeah, because this person was nothing more than a user or a manipulator, or they just wouldn't follow through on what they promised they would. Or a fourth complaint that you can have is, I just can't get past my anger. And the anger that you can have can actually feel pretty legitimate. You have a resentment. Can't you see this person is really a jerk, and it's just wrong that they would treat me this way? And so you hold on to that complaint, which is driven by your ideal. Or a fifth very common complaint is, others might be turned off to me if I move on from that narcissist. Because you see, one of the things that can happen is the narcissist with other individuals can be charming and friendly. At least they're kind of working their people, if you will, with all sorts of ingredients that you know are not accurate. But if you say, well, I'm done with this, then other individuals might say, yeah, it seems to me like you're the bad guy here. You're the one who just people can't get along with. And then you can think, well, how am I going to explain this in, a 3-minute explanation? Or a sixth complaint that you can hold on to is, I just know that narcissist is a fraud. That person is nothing but a phony, and that individual needs to be exposed. And yet they're just going to skip along, just pretending like everything's okay, but I know better. And it can cause you to hold on to your frustration due to that notion. Or a seventh complaint that perhaps you can hold on to is, you know what? I think the narcissist deserves to suffer. And you have this thought and this desire that says, what I'd like to do is just make that person's life miserable, just like they've made my life miserable. Look at all the turmoil they've generated. And then an eighth complaint that you can have is, the bottom line is, letting go of my ideals just feels very unfair. It's simply wrong for me to have been treated as poorly as that person has treated me. Now, when you look at those complaints and you can see that they're pushed along by ideals that have not been realized, my immediate reaction is, you're probably right in a vast majority of the cases. You make sense. The ideals are not like they're strange or weird. But then the narcissist is going to think, when they hear your ideals, who cares? Shut up. You've got it all wrong. And whatever you have to say to that person is going to get you nowhere good. Now, this can sound really strange when we go back to my original thought. When I say it's counterintuitive, it can sound strange to assume that your ideals can actually bring you down. And then I'm going to double down on that thought, and I'm going to say, you know what we're going to need to do? We're going to need to build in a certain amount of pessimism as you engage with not only the narcissist, but with people in general. And I know that sounds negative, and I know that sounds almost defeatist, but you see, my presumption is the human condition is built upon what we would refer to as a duality. And by that I mean each one of us has ingredients of good and evil on the inside. We're each capable of being pleasing, and we're each capable of being disappointed. We're each capable of being loving. We're each capable of being indifferent, and so on and so forth. And oddly, when you begin with a much lower view of humanity, you actually become less tense. Now, and you become reality-based. Now, obviously, I'm not suggesting that we just walk around with a cynic's mindset. You can still hold on to those values, and you can still hold on to those standards. But a starting point, beginning with yourself and then extending to that narcissist in front of you, is I am indeed going to be a realist. When positives arise in my relationships with others, I'm going to enjoy them, but I'm not going to be addicted to those positives. And then when the negatives arise, I'm going to allow myself to have the emotions that go along with it. We're not going to say that you're wrong to feel what you feel, but at the same time, I realize that those negative emotions don't tell the full story. Is there ever going to be an ideal relationship? And the answer is no. But I am going to start with the assumption that says when you fail to meet my ideals, I believe that we can still find some grounds for compromise. The problem is when you have a highly narcissistic individual, their thought about compromise is good, do everything my way. And the narcissists, because they have such an entitled attitude, are not going to be able to respond with healthy reality leading the way. But you know what? I'm not going to respond with my own reverse entitlement. And that's what some of that high idealism can lead to. I like what I believe. I like my standards. I like my values. But at the same time, I'm going to build in a reality. This is an individual who's disturbed, and I can't afford to allow myself to go down the rabbit holes that they generate. Now, I hope this gives you some good food for thought, and it can prompt you to ask, what am I carrying around inside myself that might actually be working against me, and how can I make some healthy adjustments, knowing the narcissist isn't going to be working with me. That's what I try to do as I put these videos out here. I try to give you some good things to think through. If you've not already done so, I would encourage you to subscribe to the channel. We're going to keep more videos coming towards you. And as you watch them on a cumulative basis, I hope it can have a real healthy effect on you and impact on you. Likewise, I know that many times you can think, I could use a therapist myself to help me unpack all of this. And you know that I've been sponsored for years by the people at BetterHelp.com. It's an online therapy resource. We have a link below that will carry you to their website. If you go through the link, you get a 10% discount on the first month. It's very affordable, it's accessible, and I've had good success. So please, if you need to have somebody that can walk you through some of the ways to get through this, seek the help that I know that could be good for you. Likewise, I have my therapeutic courses. It's like signing up for an online class. Each course has multiple videos, like 25 or more. And then with each video, there are written documents and guided questions. We have Ready, Set, Connect. It's a course about having good connection skills. We have This Is Me, a course about having your good boundaries, Free to Be, finding yourself despite those controllers. And then we also have my webinars that have already been produced, but you can find on our website. In addition, we have my podcast, books, articles, many resources for you. Okay, I know that you have ideals, and I don't say to let go of them entirely. Hold on to them with the understanding of the duality. There's the ideal, and then there's the profane, if you will. And we need to make room for both. But as you do, I hope that it causes you to become a more balanced individual, and in the process, it allows you to move down the path towards a steadiness that the narcissist does not have, but then waiting for you, hopefully at the end of that, or in the process, it allows you to become a person of peace.